The four Focke-Wulf 190s dived on the lone P-51 Mustang from 28,000 feet, and Hauptmann Wilhelm Meyer was already positioning for what looked like a textbook kill. The American flew straight and level, apparently oblivious to the ambush. Easy target. Then 3 more Mustangs appeared from the sun above him. Meyer's wingman died in the first pass. His element leader took cannon rounds through the cockpit and went down trailing smoke. Meyer and the 4th German pilot survived only by diving through their own flak, a humiliating escape that veteran pilots would have considered unthinkable 6 months earlier. March 1944. As Meyer filed his after-action report at his base near Nancy, he wrote something that would be echoed in dozens of Luftwaffe intelligence summaries over the coming weeks. The Americans are no longer fighting like pilots. They are fighting like a machine. The German pilot had just encountered something that violated every principle of fighter combat the Luftwaffe had refined over 8 years of warfare. The Americans weren't trying to outfly German pilots. They had built a system where outflying didn't matter. The Luftwaffe in 1944 had every reason to be confident in their fighter tactics. Since the Spanish Civil War, German pilots had refined their doctrine through continuous combat experience. Their Schwarm formation, 4 aircraft in 2 pairs, gave them tactical flexibility no other air force could match. More importantly, they had the aces to prove it worked. Erich Hartmann, 352 kills. Gerhard Barkhorn, 301 kills. Günther Rall, 275 kills. The Luftwaffe had over 100 pilots with 50 or more victories. American top aces rarely exceeded 40 kills. The numbers seem to validate German fighter doctrine. Train pilots to be individually superior. Give them freedom to maneuver. Let their skill decide the fight. German fighter training in the early war years took about 13 months and emphasized aerobatic mastery, energy management, and deflection shooting. The goal was creating pilots with what Germans called fingertip feeling, the instinctive understanding that separated competent pilots from lethal ones. Every German fighter pilot was trained to be an ace. By 1944, fuel shortages and instructor losses had forced Germany to reduce training significantly, but the doctrine remained unchanged. American pilots, by contrast, seemed almost deliberately mediocre. Their training lasted just 6 months. They flew rigid formations. They avoided dogfights. When German pilots engaged them one-on-one in early 1943, the Americans seemed timid, breaking off combat and diving away rather than fighting. The Luftwaffe interpreted this as confirmation of what they'd always believed. Americans lacked the martial spirit necessary for air combat. They had good equipment, but poor fighting instincts. But by March 1944, something had changed. Luftwaffe pilots were dying at rates that defied explanation. Experienced aces who had survived hundreds of combat missions were being shot down by American pilots who seemed to have no individual skill whatsoever. The Americans had stopped trying to dogfight. Instead, they had implemented something the Luftwaffe intelligence called mutual support doctrine. A tactical system so simple it seemed stupid, yet so effective it was killing Germany's best pilots. The American system worked like this. 4 fighters flew in pairs. The lead pilot's job was to attack. The wingman's only job was to protect the lead. Not to get kills, not to maneuver independently, just to stay in position and shoot anyone who threatened his leader. When German pilots attacked lone American fighters, situations that should have been easy kills, they found themselves being attacked from positions they hadn't expected, by pilots they hadn't seen, executing coordinated maneuvers that left no room for individual initiative to matter. The contrast revealed fundamentally different philosophies of warfare. German doctrine asked, "How do we create the best individual fighter pilot?" American doctrine asked, "How do we make average pilots effective in combat?" Germany's answer required 18 months of training, natural talent, and combat experience to develop. America's answer could be taught in 3 weeks. Stay with your leader. Watch his 6 o'clock. Shoot anyone who gets on his tail. Don't chase kills. Luftwaffe aces found the American approach almost offensive. Individual skill meant nothing in this system. A mediocre American pilot in the right position could kill an ace who was focused on a different target. The Americans had removed honor from air combat and replaced it with industrial thinking. German pilots described frustration in their after-action reports at facing opponents who wouldn't fight properly, who wouldn't accept individual challenges, who wouldn't break formation to pursue kills, who treated air combat as a job rather than a test of skill. One captured pilot told interrogators, "They fly like truck drivers. No initiative, no creativity, just following procedures. But they keep coming, and there are always more of them." He was right. But just following procedures was proving more effective than ace-level skill. The tactical implications became clear in the statistics. German kill ratios against American fighters declined significantly as American pilots gained experience and refined their mutual support tactics. By mid-1944, American fighters were achieving consistent successes against the Luftwaffe. Not because American pilots had become better individual pilots, but because the system made individual excellence less important than positional discipline. A German ace with 50 kills, diving on what looked like an easy target, would be shot down by that target's wingman. An American pilot, with maybe 2 or 3 kills who did nothing creative or skillful. He simply stayed in position and executed his one job: protect the leader. The Luftwaffe had no effective counter. Their entire tactical doctrine was built around individual freedom to engage targets of opportunity. Requiring German pilots to fly in rigid formations would negate their greatest advantage, superior individual skill, but allowing them to maneuver freely meant they were being ambushed by Americans who stayed in mutually supporting pairs. What Meyer and other German pilots didn't know was that while they were being killed by American formation discipline, Luftwaffe High Command in Berlin was reading intelligence reports that made the tactical picture even worse. By 1944, American training schools were producing fighter pilots several times faster than Germany could replace losses. Germany was losing aces who took 18 months to create. America was losing pilots who took 6 months to train, and replacing them faster than the Luftwaffe could shoot them down. German fighter training: create irreplaceable experts who win through individual skill. American fighter training: create replaceable components who win through system discipline. The side that needed aces was losing them. The side that made aces unnecessary kept sending more. By 1944, Luftwaffe leadership recognized they faced not just American pilots, but an industrial training system, replacement system, and tactical doctrine that treated pilots as interchangeable parts in a larger machine. And you can't shoot down a production system that produces pilots faster than you can kill them. By April 1944, the Luftwaffe was issuing emergency directives. Avoid combat with American fighters unless absolutely necessary. Focus on the bombers. Don't chase individual victories. German pilots developed bitter respect for American tactics even as they resented them. Captured Luftwaffe after-action reports describe frustration at facing opponents who refused to fight properly, who wouldn't accept individual challenges, who wouldn't break formation to pursue kills, who treated air combat as a job rather than a test of skill. The comparison to industrial workers was more accurate than they knew. America had approached fighter tactics the same way it approached truck production. Design a system that works with ordinary people, make the system reproducible, train people quickly to execute the system, and produce enough people that losses don't matter. By summer 1944, the Luftwaffe had effectively lost air superiority over Western Europe. Not because American pilots were better. Individual German aces still achieved higher kill counts when they survived long enough. But because American tactics made individual ace-level skill increasingly irrelevant. A German pilot with 100 kills could be shot down by an American pilot with 3 kills if that American pilot stayed in position and executed his wingman duties. The mathematics were brutal. Germany couldn't replace skilled pilots fast enough. America didn't need to. Their system worked with average pilots, and they had unlimited average pilots. The Luftwaffe's response to D-Day illustrated the collapse. On June 6, 1944, Allied forces flew 14,674 operational sorties over Normandy against 319 Luftwaffe sorties. German fighters that did take off were instructed to avoid American fighters entirely and focus only on ground attack missions where they wouldn't face coordinated fighter opposition. The tactical revolution America implemented in 1943 to 1944 didn't just win air superiority. It redefined what air superiority meant. Germany had built their fighter force around the idea that superior pilots flying superior tactics would compensate for numerical disadvantage. America proved that systematic tactics executed by adequate pilots would defeat individual excellence if you had enough adequate pilots. 3 months after Meyer's encounter with the P-51 trap, Luftwaffe High Command held an emergency conference reviewing fighter tactics and losses. Internal assessments, captured after the war, showed German leadership understood they faced numerical disadvantages that negated tactical superiority. The recommendation was to adopt defensive posture to preserve experienced pilots. The recommendation came too late. By then, the Luftwaffe had lost air superiority, lost the ability to defend German cities, and lost the strategic initiative. Not because they lacked skilled pilots, but because skill alone couldn't overcome a system designed to make skill less important than teamwork, discipline, and numbers. Today, every air force in the world flies some version of the tactical system America developed in 1943. The basic building block is still the element. 2 aircraft, 1 leader, and 1 wingman, with the wingman's primary job being protection rather than kills. Flight leads are still taught to trust their wingman to watch their blind spots. Wingmen are still evaluated on their ability to stay in position rather than their individual kill counts. The Luftwaffe's emphasis on individual ace development has been relegated to historical study, remembered as tactically impressive but strategically obsolete. Because what America understood in 1944 remains true today. Wars aren't won by the side with the best individual warriors. They're won by the side that builds the best system and produces enough people to execute it. The German aces were legends. Individually, more skilled, more experienced, more lethal than their American opponents. But they were fighting a system that had industrialized survival, made teamwork more valuable than skill, and produced replaceable pilots faster than Germany could kill them. In the end, Germany learned America was built different not on a single day, but through hundreds of encounters where German pilots discovered that individual excellence couldn't overcome systematic, disciplined, numerical superiority executed by ordinary pilots who trusted their wingmen more than their own skill. The side that created aces lost to the side that made aces unnecessary. That lesson remains the foundation of fighter tactics 80 years later. August 1944. The briefing room at RAF Bodney fell silent as Major George Preddy walked in. His P-51 Mustang was still cooling on the hard stand outside. 2 more German fighters added to his tally, 16 confirmed kills. But when he took his seat among the assembled pilots of the 352nd Fighter Group, nobody congratulated him. Instead, whispers. A voice loud enough to carry across the room. "There goes Preddy. Runs away every time it gets interesting." Another pilot laughed. 20 kills, and I've never seen him dogfight once. Just dives in, shoots, and runs. My grandmother could rack up kills flying like that. Preddy ignored them. He'd heard it all before. Preddy's scared to fight fair. Real aces turn with the enemy. He's just a hit-and-run artist who won't stick around when things get tough. The criticism came from everywhere. Young pilots who believed dogfighting separated cowards from heroes, squadron mates who considered sustained turning combat the mark of a true fighter ace. What none of them understood was that everything they believed about aerial combat was wrong. Dogfighting wasn't bravery. It was suicide dressed up as honor. And while his critics mocked him for refusing to play the enemy's game, Preddy was quietly revolutionizing how American pilots fought the air war over Europe. By December 1944, George Preddy would be the deadliest P-51 Mustang ace in American history, with 26.83 confirmed kills. Most of the pilots who had called him a coward would be dead, shot down while trying to prove their courage in turning fights they couldn't win. This is the story of how one pilot understood that physics beats bravery, and how the coward who refused to dogfight changed American fighter tactics and saved thousands of lives. American fighter pilot doctrine in 1944 was simple, romantic, and deadly. Real pilots turned with the enemy. Close in, knife fight dogfighting, where superior skill determined the victor. The belief came from World War I aces, from Hollywood movies, from every story about aerial combat ever told. If you couldn't outturn your opponent, you weren't really a fighter pilot. The problem was that German fighters could outturn American P-51s at certain speeds and altitudes. The Focke-Wulf 190 had superior roll rate. The Messerschmitt 109 could tighten its turn radius under specific conditions. When American pilots accepted dogfights, they were playing to German strengths, and they were dying. The statistics were brutal. Allied fighter losses over Europe climbed steadily through early 1944. Experienced pilots, men who had survived months of combat, were being killed in prolonged turning engagements where German fighters exploited their advantages. Before we continue, I'd love to know where you're watching from and what you think about Preddy's tactics. Was refusing to dogfight cowardice or genius? Drop a comment below. And if you appreciate this level of historical detail, I hope you'll subscribe to the channel. These stories take serious research to get the details right, and knowing you're out there makes it all worthwhile. Preddy had watched squadron after squadron lose pilots to turning fights. Good men, brave men, skilled pilots, all dead because they believed you had to fight fair. He saw the mathematics everyone else ignored. A P-51 Mustang had advantages German fighters couldn't match: speed in level flight, diving ability, and, most critically, the ability to climb back to altitude faster than anything Germany flew. The question was whether to use those advantages or surrender them by accepting dogfights on the enemy's terms. Preddy's tactic was brutally simple. Start 5,000 feet above the enemy. Dive at full throttle. The P-51 could reach 500 miles per hour in a dive, faster than any German fighter could safely handle. Line up the shot during the descent. Fire one burst, 2 seconds maximum. Then use that diving speed to climb back to altitude, before the enemy could react. Boom and zoom, pilots called it. Dive, shoot, climb away. Never turn with the enemy. Never stick around for a second pass if you missed. Never, ever accept a dogfight invitation. His squadron mates hated it. Where was the skill? Where was the courage? Any pilot could point his nose down and squeeze the trigger. Real aces stayed in the fight, turned with the enemy, proved their superiority through sustained combat. The mockery intensified as Preddy's kill count climbed. 5 victories in July, 4 more in August. Each one followed the same pattern. Altitude advantage, diving attack, immediate separation, no extended combat, no dramatic turning duels, just physics, geometry, and 2 seconds of accurate gunnery. Preddy's padding his score with easy kills. He's never been tested in real combat. The young lions of the 352nd Fighter Group wanted glory. Preddy wanted to survive long enough to go home. By September 1944, the mathematics of Preddy's approach became impossible to ignore. He had 23 confirmed kills, but more tellingly, he had 0 close calls, no forced landings, no battle damage requiring emergency procedures. His P-51 returned from missions with minor bullet holes at most, often completely untouched. The pilots who mocked him weren't so lucky. The 352nd Fighter Group's casualty lists told a grim story. Pilots who accepted prolonged turning engagements with German fighters were dying at alarming rates. Some were shot down immediately. Others survived initial combat only to be caught during extended maneuvering when fuel ran low and options disappeared. Colonel Joe Mason, commanding the 352nd Fighter Group through most of 1944, started quietly recommending Preddy's approach. Not officially, the old doctrine still dominated training manuals, but in private mission briefings, the message spread. Use your altitude. Don't turn with them. Fight like Preddy. Still, the criticism persisted among many pilots. Preddy was racking up kills, yes, but he wasn't proving anything. Any pilot could survive if they ran away every time things got difficult. Real aces stood and fought. The breakthrough in understanding would come not from debating tactics, but from understanding the physics those tactics exploited. What Preddy understood, what his critics couldn't see, was energy management. It wasn't cowardice, it was physics. Every aircraft in the sky has 2 types of energy: kinetic energy from speed and potential energy from altitude. You can trade one for the other, dive to convert altitude into speed, climb to convert speed back into altitude. But different aircraft convert energy at different rates, and that's where the advantage lay. The P-51 Mustang was exceptional at energy conversion. Its streamlined design and powerful Packard Merlin engine meant it could dive fast, maintain that speed, and climb efficiently back to altitude. German fighters like the FW-190 and ME-109 were optimized for different characteristics, primarily turning performance, which requires bleeding energy rapidly through high G-forces in tight turns. When American pilots accepted dogfights, they were voluntarily surrendering their aircraft's primary advantage to fight in the regime where German fighters excelled. It was like a boxer with superior reach agreeing to wrestle instead of punch. Strategically incoherent. Tactically suicidal. Preddy's boom and zoom exploited energy advantages ruthlessly. Start with 5,000 feet of potential energy. Convert it to 500 miles per hour of kinetic energy during the dive. Use that speed advantage for one high-speed pass. Then convert excess kinetic energy back to altitude before the enemy can respond. The German pilot never got to use his superior turning radius because Preddy never turned. He never got to exploit his aircraft's strengths because the engagement was over before he could bring them to bear. This wasn't cowardice. This was understanding that aerial combat wasn't about courage or skill in turning fights. It was about physics, and the side that fought according to physical laws won. August 6, 1944. The mission that silenced every critic. Preddy's flight encountered a formation of Messerschmitt 109s escorting German bombers over Hamburg, Germany. 20 enemy fighters. Preddy positioned his four-ship P-51 formation 8,000 feet above the enemy, perfect setup. He didn't hesitate. Roll, dive, accelerate. One Me-109 exploded under his guns. Zoom climb back to altitude. Reposition. Second diving pass. Another 109 trailing smoke and fire. His wingmen struggled to match his rapid altitude changes, climbing and diving with precision that seemed impossible. Third pass. Fourth pass. Fifth pass. The German formation was scattering, confused by attacks coming from above at speeds their aircraft couldn't match. Pilots who tried to turn and engage found Preddy already climbing away, converting his speed back to altitude before they could line up shots. Sixth pass. 6 Messerschmitt 109s destroyed in 17 minutes of combat. Preddy never turned with a single enemy aircraft, never accepted a dogfight invitation, never deviated from energy management principles. The gun camera footage told the story when he returned to Bodny. Every kill followed identical geometry. Diving attack, 2-second burst, immediate zoom climb, methodical, precise, undeniable. 29 confirmed kills now. 0 close calls. The mockery stopped that day. By late 1944, the evidence had become overwhelming. Preddy's tactics weren't just keeping him alive, they were the most effective way to fight the air war over Europe. His survival rate combined with his kill count proved that energy management wasn't cowardice. It was the future of aerial combat. Colonel James D. Maiden, who assumed command of the 352nd Fighter Group in November 1944, made the approach official. New pilots arriving at Bodny received explicit instruction: use altitude advantage, execute diving attacks, never accept sustained turning combat with German fighters. The tactical bulletins spreading through 8th Air Force fighter groups were even more direct. Enemy fighters are optimized for turning combat. Do not engage on their terms. Maintain altitude advantage. Execute boom and zoom attacks. Separate immediately after each pass. What had been ridiculed as cowardice in August became official doctrine by December. Preddy's approach was renamed Energy Management Tactics in training manuals. The mockery transformed into mandatory instruction. The Germans noticed the change. Luftwaffe combat reports from late 1944 and early 1945 frequently complained that American fighters refused to dogfight. German aces, trained to exploit superior turning performance, found themselves unable to bring their skills to bear against opponents who attacked from above and disappeared before sustained combat could develop. December 25, 1944. Preddy was scrambled to intercept German fighters attacking Allied positions during the Battle of the Bulge. He shot down 2 Focke-Wulf 190s using his standard tactics: diving attacks from altitude, no turning combat, immediate separation after each pass. 32 confirmed kills now. The highest-scoring P-51 Mustang ace in the European theater. His tactics had been proven. His approach had become doctrine. He had revolutionized American fighter combat. But war doesn't care about tactics or survival rates or revolutionary approaches. During the engagement, Preddy pursued damaged German aircraft at low altitude over Allied lines near Liège, Belgium. An American anti-aircraft gunner seeing a fighter at low altitude in the chaos and confusion of battle, opened fire. George Preddy was killed by friendly fire at age 25, not by a German pilot who outturned him. Not because his energy management tactics failed, but because in the chaos of war, even perfect tactics can't protect you from everything. The pilot, who had survived hundreds of combat missions by refusing to fight on the enemy's terms, was killed by his own side. After the war, Luftwaffe commanders revealed what they had recognized by late 1944. American fighter tactics had evolved in ways that nullified German advantages. Colonel Günther Röhl, one of Germany's highest-scoring aces, with 275 confirmed kills, was among those who analyzed the tactical shift. In post-war interviews, he acknowledged that American fighters had stopped playing to German strengths. They refused to turn with us. Every engagement became diving attacks from altitude followed by immediate separation. We could not bring them to sustained combat, where our training and aircraft performance advantages mattered. German fighter doctrine had been built on superior turning performance and pilot skill in close-in combat. When American pilots stopped accepting those terms of engagement, that entire tactical framework became irrelevant. German aces could outturn anyone in the sky, but they never got the chance. The irony was complete. The tactics that had been mocked as cowardice in 1944 had, by 1945, rendered German fighter tactics obsolete. Energy management principles, fighting in the vertical rather than the horizontal, maintaining speed and altitude rather than accepting turning combat, had changed the fundamental nature of aerial warfare. Today, every fighter pilot in every air force learns energy management as fundamental doctrine. The U.S. Air Force Weapons School teaches what was once called boom and zoom, now termed vertical maneuvering, as the foundation of modern air combat tactics. The F-22 Raptor and F-35 Lightning II, America's most advanced fighters, are designed around the same principle George Preddy understood in 1944. Altitude and energy advantages matter more than turning ability. Modern fighter doctrine explicitly instructs pilots to fight in the vertical, maintain altitude, use speed, avoid sustained turning combat that bleeds energy. George Preddy finished the war with 26.83 confirmed kills, the highest tally of any P-51 Mustang pilot in the European theater. The fractional kill resulted from a shared victory. More importantly, he proved that aerial combat isn't about courage in dogfights. It's about understanding physics and refusing to fight on the enemy's terms. The pilots who called him a coward didn't survive 1944. They died proving their bravery in turning fights they couldn't win. Preddy survived until friendly fire claimed him, because he understood that honoring fallen comrades doesn't mean dying like they did. It means surviving by fighting smarter. In the end, the coward who ran from every dogfight became America's deadliest Mustang ace and revolutionized fighter combat doctrine. Not despite his tactics, but because of them. Physics doesn't care about bravery. And in aerial warfare, the side that accepts that reality wins. One pilot's refusal to fight fair changed how every fighter pilot in the world approaches combat. That's George Preddy's legacy, proving that surviving to fight another day isn't cowardice. It's victory.